gets and a layout update. Stay tuned and all will be revealed. Well, good afternoon everyone and welcome back to Piccadilly Model Railways and indeed Piccadilly Eastway. Now, you may have realised it was the Great Electric Train Show last week and I have to say it was absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed being there and wandering around, looking at the different trade stands, looking at the layouts and everything like that. But most of all, it was fantastic to meet all of you guys too. So many people came up to me and to the other YouTubers that I was with, and that was a real joy just to be able to talk to you and find out what you're doing, that type of thing. So it really was absolutely fantastic. Met loads of other YouTubers that I've not met before as well, so that was really good, and managed to spend a bit of time at lunch with Ian's Engage and Ewan from the Growler, Blackwood Engage. So that was a really good time spent with those two as well. Thank you guys. So you may have also realised that I didn't put out a video last week, and the main reason for that was because I'm just so tired. School is up to full swing now, and you know, I was doing well just to be there, let alone going around with a camera as well. So I decided that this occasion I wouldn't do that. I normally try and take the Monday off, but for particular reasons I needed to keep going this year. So you never know. I'm hoping to go to the show at the end of November at the NEC, so you never know, I might be able to get around with the camera then. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, let's have a look at some of the things I got from the show. Just want to show you something before we get started. So obviously on the 00 gauge layout. Now have a look down there. You can see there are some nuclear flask wagons. There are the snow plows. Down there we've got the HSTs, and then we've got the Mark IIs at the APT, and you'll probably make out the teaks, and there's the 158 in Regional Railways livery, and you've got the four-wheeled Genesis coaches that Hatton's produced as was. But looking across all that, there's not an awful lot of modern stock. So my mission when I went to Getz was to see what I could find. So the first thing I found was this. Now, I must stress before I say anything else, it was a real job to find hardly anything, to be honest, because a lot of the manufacturers, I'm not knocking them, please don't get the wrong impression, because they take the stock that they think is going to sell, and that's the point. But not many had anything that is currently running. So to find something which wasn't priced at silly prices was very difficult. So anyway, I found this. So obviously a Nacho, I'm not sure how you say that, but hopper there. And that's that one. And then you think, I've got that. And you think, well, what have I bought? What have I bought a railroad one? Well, I'll explain in a minute. But I thought that was quite a nice rendition. There is obviously Revolution Trains have done a more detailed version. And there is a TEA tanker. And the last thing, which is not going to be included in my next comment, but that's got you wondering, doesn't it? But anyway, that's another coach. But the idea of these is that I've bought one and then I'm going to try and reproduce my own. So just taking the JNA first of all then, this is my first rendition. Now it's not finished and it is very tatty, and I'm not going to make them all pristine. They are vehicles that run on the network, and they do get dirty, they will get tatty and all sorts, and that's the point. Although having said that, I've painted that quite pristine. I will be making a load, probably out of screwed up newspaper or something, or bits of polystyrene, and then cover it with whatever. So that's that. Now this part here, the base inside here, the chassis which goes up to here and then all the way along, I'll explain that in a minute. is all filament printed. The ends on this particular one are filament printed. Okay. Now, actually, I think for the actual body of the vehicle, that's not turned out too bad, to be honest with you. I'm quite happy with that. And it certainly will give a rigid structure with no problems at all. But obviously, this section and the bogies are resin printed. Now, I've got a whole load of stuff in here. So that's one of the bogies. There you go. Can you see which is which? I think it's quite obvious. The top one is obviously filament printed and the bottom one is resin printed. And the difference is just absolutely phenomenal, really. You can see all the detail, including the spring, has come out very beautifully. And yes, I've painted it and there's little bits of paint got stuck inside the spring, but I'm not worried, to be honest. But all the flange around the outside of that bogie has come out, whereas you can see, I mean, it's not terrible on the top, and I have used filament printed bogies in the past. I mean, if I bought that, obviously, on a model that I've bought from, say, Bachmann or something, I would take it back. But, you know, when you make things yourself, you do tend to drop the standard a bit. But the difference between those is just chalk and cheese. I'll show you the other side. It's no different, but you can see. Yeah. So I'm really, really pleased with that lower one. And the top one, well, you just go and it can go to the big place in the sky, can't it? But there's those. And this bit at the bottom. Now, that's what I've made. And I've obviously, with this bottom bit being filament printed, I thought I'm going to make that so it literally just sits on the top. That's the idea. And then I glue it down. But that is based on the GBRF version. There are different ones out there. And, you know, so obviously if I was to make another version of this, then there'd be maybe a couple of tanks, and there's a lot more detail going through the middle. So when I saw this one and got the least, I thought that's good. I'm liking that. Just to let you know, there is a wheel on this bogie, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've got one of these, maybe you could let me know. I think the wheel is on the same bogie at the same place, so it's symmetrical just there. I think that's right. So if you see that and you got one of these, the Revolution Trainman's ones, if you can let me know, then I can soon make those wheels to put on. But I'm quite pleased with that. You probably noticed in here, I've made some ends, and then the buffer beam is separately printed. Okay. Now, I thought I'd try and be clever with putting all that gubbins on it. There is a coupling hook there, and that lump in the middle, let's put that down. This lump in the middle is a chain that's been folded up, but to be honest with you, I don't think it works particularly well. And in hindsight, the pipe here, I've snapped both off in the end by accident, but that's just going to show they're not going to last for very long, and they're going to get in the way. I think they're going to get in the way of the coupling when I finally put those on. So that's what I'm thinking. Now, coupling, what I'm thinking doing, in fact, let me show you one of these. So there's the bogie, and I'm thinking of making like an L-shaped piece, and then goes to the box, which I'll refer to shortly, and I'll show you what I mean by that. It's a box with a slit in the middle, and there's a bar, and then a magnet on the end. And I think if that comes out over the axle, and then it sort of sits here in front of the bogie itself, and then that will turn when the bogie turns, and then the bar will be allowed to swivel, and I think that will end up with some smooth running. Now, this is my first one, and as you can see, there are some modifications to be made, but on the whole, I'm quite pleased with that. I will modify this particular one for these buffer beams, but, you know, I'm really, really happy with that. So, but what I am going to ask you for, though, please, if you know, the decals down the side here, I've looked on Fox and I've looked on Railtech. And whilst Railtech do have a range of J&A wagons. They don't appear to have the GBRF version. I might be wrong and I've not seen it. Fox has got a couple, but again, not the GBRF then, not one. But if you know where I can get the decals from for the J&A with GBRF, please do put it in the comments below. Then it would be really good to get this sort of painted or decaled up, if you like. You'll probably notice even in this light, it is quite sort of tatty looking, and that is the look I'm going for, to be honest with you. That will be covered with a load, probably ballast or whatever it might be. I think these carry rubbish as well, don't they? I think, like metal waste. But, you know, the idea would be that I make 12 or 13 of these so that I fill up a lane of the Traverser plus the 66. So I think that should work quite well, but it just needs some work. Okay. So obviously these are stay alives, and I've bought that for this. There's been a couple of instances where it just stops and the other power car at the other end, it keeps running. So that's not going to do the motors any good whatsoever. So I went to see Richard from New Junction on the Acura scale stand, because when he was loaned one of those, he tried to put the Hornby one in and it didn't fit. So I went to DCC Concepts at Getz and bought these two. And then I went to see Hornby and I said, do you think that these will fit in that? And I spoke to Carl, and he thought that they probably would, as long as they put the wires under the decoder and then wrap these in a single layer of Kapton tape. So they won't overheat and then it won't damage anything inside the electronics of the flirt. So I will be fitting that. Now I've also, I've got another one of these in my storage boxes, if you like, but I also bought this, a 6-pin, and this was for the N-Gage 323. The reason for that is because I just put a standard chip in that, just a single decoder, and it's not the most reliable runner. So I've got this one now with one of these, and hopefully that should transform it. Just a quick note on the 323 and the N-Gage and the 185. I am going to have another go. Now I've got the resin printer. I think it would just it might just bring out a little bit more detail. And not only that, the livery on the 185, it's too grey. I want it to match the 350 that I did, which was a lot more sort of aluminium colour, silvery colour. So anyway, but that's those. Now on to some other things that I've managed to get from my local model. Now zooming out a little bit, you'll remember me talking about a line coming from in here, going up the middle, and then one going that way, one going that way via Y points, things like that. Well, so I finally managed to get 2 Electrofrog Y points. Bearing in mind this is code 100, and I'm told that they are not available in the Unifrog yet. So these will be fine with frog juicers, and I've also managed to get 4 pieces of wooden sleeper track and 4 pieces of concrete sleeper track. But there is another thing that you may or may not have noticed, and I've actually managed to get the turntable. Now all of this, as I've said many times before, and I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail now, the idea is that a train will come out, go round this way, and if I want it to go the other way, it will either enter just up there or just up there on those crossovers, come down here, round onto that middle line, which I shall make using this, and obviously the Y points, and then cross over to this side. So it goes from that side to this side, and if you follow it round, the train will end up coming back on the other direction. And same again when it goes down the ramp, which goes down all the way around here. And then obviously down here, down to the traversa fiddle yard at the bottom. So that's the whole point of the layout. And then obviously when it gets to the end there, you probably remember me talking about the mini traversa at the end. So a locomotive, I can't speak. The locomotive will come off the train, come back down line 1, and then enter the turntable, turn around, regardless of whether it's a diesel, electric, because it will have all the detailing pipes and connections on one end of the buffer beam and a coupling on the other end. So it will need to turn around and then come back to the other end of the train, and off we go again. That's the whole point. So I've now got all the different fittings I need to do, well, almost, to get that working. I do need an auto reverser here, but I do have some double pole, double throw switches, which I will use initially, and then when that comes in the model shop, I'll go and get that then. But it's all starting to come together now. That's part of the update part as purchases, but I've also, I don't know whether you can make this out, you might be able to, started to put in super elevation, hence all these things here. Now I've made these on the 3D printer and they are literally just wedges. So hopefully you can see that. And I've put the sizes on them. Do that in Tinkercad, so I know obviously which one's which, because when you've got them side by side, you can't tell. But different ones, different places. And then obviously you start off with a very shallow one. So I have actually got some 0.5. I think that's these. Yeah. So I've got some 0.5. These ones didn't particularly print very well, so I've done them again since, but you can see what I'm aiming at there, can't you? So they would start off, it's obviously here, not on the point, really shallow, and then next you have a couple of those, and then a couple of the next size up, and a couple of the next size up, and you build it up, and it goes around like that. And for the majority of trains, that works absolutely beautifully. Except one, yeah. Yes. Now, I'm trying to work out what to do with this, to be honest with you. I want them. I want to keep it. I want to have another one, even. It goes round one way when the power car is at that end, and it'll go that way round, and it'll come back on this way round. Lovely. Marvellous. But if I was to turn the train round, so this is here, obviously turns all the way around, which it would do on this layout, because that's the point. It derails over there and a few other places, and I've spent hours trying to sort that out over there. I've taken out a lot of the super elevation just in case that was causing the problem, because it did run on the other layout beautifully, and I was kind of hoping that it would do the same. I did talk to Hornby about it, but it's actually a track issue. If you've got any ideas of what I can do, I am thinking about the other possibilities, maybe putting in a little terminus station, or maybe even revive this and it stops here. So it comes out, stops, and then goes back the other way. I don't know at the moment. I'm still trying to work it out. Next up. Now, obviously, I've got 66740 in front of me. Now, if I was to turn that up the other way, you will see, as I've said before, one end is detailed and the other end has a coupling. Now, if I put this on the carpet, because I think it's probably going to be a little bit safer, if you like. There we go, I've just wedged in these two boxes. Now, you will see on the end here, there is a coupling. Now, what I've done is I've got a magnetic coupling on the locomotive, and it's the same polarity. So all the locomotive couplings I've painted on the bottom orange. Okay, so if I turn it over, hopefully you can make out that what I've got is this box just there underneath, and you'll see there's a piece of blue tack underneath it. Blue tack? Well, there's a pin that runs through there, and if you blue tack the pin in, I can get the coupling out. That's the point. So that is literally held in there with the pin and the blue tack. If I was to glue that like I used to, I can't get the pin out, and I end up having to drill it out, and then it's really difficult if there's a problem with the coupling, if it breaks or anything like that. And I've had all of that. So I've gone for blue tack just to hold the pin in. It's not under any stress because the forces go that way and the pin goes that way, if that makes any sense. So this is a 4mm magnet, and you could probably make out the shape that I've got there. So I've got this four-sided box. So there's a top, two sides and the back. There's a reinforcing triangle just there, and it's basically just a rod of plastic, which I've made on the filament printer. They do tend to come out quite strong, but I could probably easily just resin print those, but I'm just afraid that the sides would snap off. So anyway, I'll glue that in with super glue. And as I said before, I colour the bottom of the magnet orange on the locomotive. Then this is just obviously it's a 21-ton magnet, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's a very similar type of setup just there. So I've got that box with a slit through the middle, and there's a hole, and the pin goes through where that piece of blue tack is. And it's exactly the same. So I've got obviously the coupling, different size, but this time they're blue because it's a different polarity. And I've put the blue paint on the end of every rake of wagons, coaches, whatever it might be. And on the other end, I've just left it black so that that is an internal coupling, if you like. And it's obviously quite easy to work out which way the wagons go, because it won't attract, the two magnets won't attract if it's the wrong way around. But I've painstakingly gone through every wagon, every coach to fit these, and the running quality is so much better. And these couplings probably cost, even with the magnets, I don't know, 50 pence, and that's the magnet is the most expensive part. The actual 3D print there, you're probably looking, what, 10 pence, if that, to be honest. And so compared to some of the magnetic couplings that are out there, you can make your own for so much cheaper. And if it doesn't work, you can make another one and have another go. You know, that's the beauty of it. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave this video here in amongst all the devastation that's been created with all this stuff. And I will see you again very, very soon here on Piccadilly Eastway and Piccadilly Model Railways. Take care of yourself. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.